greet everybody in Jesus' name. Thank you for all our visitors that have come, some from Alaska, I see. And I want to share a little bit what the Lord's laid on my heart. And I'm going to start it off with reading in Luke 1, I think it is. It's in Luke 21. I'm going to start with 34 at Luke 21:34. Read it to the end of the chapter. It says, "Take heed of yourself at any times your heart be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, so that the day come upon you unaware. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And in the daytime he was about teaching in the temple, and at night he went out and abode in the mount that is called the Mount Olives. And all people came to him early in the morning, and the temple for him to hear him." I want to focus a little bit. The word says take heed, but then it goes on that your hearts not be overcharged. That word overcharge is saying weighed down, and the surfeiting, if I pronounce that right, it means carousing, but it also has some other meanings as well. And drunkenness and the cares of this life, so that the day come upon you unaware. The drunkenness is a little bit what I want to focus on. I find Christian people all over the church chart about drinking alcohol, and I must say I hung on the fence a little bit on that for a long time myself. As a single man, it kind of looks in the Bible that they had alcohol. Jesus talked about a lot of wine, alcohol, and I've heard messages of people trying to say that's not what it means. They had no alcohol. Well, I tend not to completely see it that way. And part of the reason is that Jesus turned water into wine. And later the governor of the feast said, hey, you give the good stuff before the bad stuff. So what he was really saying, the governor, is like, when your senses are dull, give him the bad stuff. But we also know if he has power over the wine, he has power to take alcohol out of his life if he chose to drink it. And it almost would look like the Last Supper. They might have had it. Be where that is. There are lots of warnings in the Bible, the effects of alcohol, what it's going to do. That's what I want to try to bring out this morning. Yesterday, I was studying for this message, and I made a list. Usually Saturdays, that's my list. I make a list and things I want to get done that day. So I had made this list, and one of them was painting a door. Can somebody get me some water, please? I wanted to paint a door, and we had found some paint at Sherman-Williams. A customer returned it, didn't want it, so a few bucks, we picked it up, and I didn't know what brand. I wasn't familiar with the brand. I didn't know how to clean this up, and I put it in the spray gun. And my list for the morning, I knew it was going to pinch tight for the day to get everything done. So I took a power paint stir thing and put it in the drill and put it on low because I knew it was full. And it's like, oh, this is too slow. I got to speed it up. And so I speed it up, and it splat over the can. And it's like, oh man, it ran right over all the areas of direction and how to prep and how to surf. And I was like, I don't know if this is oil-based or water-based. How do I clean this up? So I decided just to grab a rag and kind of wipe it off of that where the letterings are. And I got my job done, and I went home. I asked my wife to remind me to clean up my gun later that night yet. I got back there, and I still haven't figured out how to clean it up. Where I had wiped it off, it was fine print, so I took it over under a light to really look at it. There was just too much paint on it, so I had to take my finger and scrape it off. And it says, warning, silica something causes cancer. So with that warning, do I heed it or do I avoid it? The idea was that you put a mask over your head so you don't inhale it to get it in your lungs. So what I like to do is kind of scratch that paint off, help us see the effects of alcohol. Sometimes in areas of my life, I wish I could say I never drank after I became a Christian. I did, because I thought I could handle it, and I believe I did, but there's still warning signs. And I want to try to help people see behind that paint the effects of alcohol. The warnings of it in the Bible. Even if Jesus drank it. So I like to look at an overall view how Montana is doing. We're affected by our society and where we live, and how people act and behave, and what's available to buy and sell, and what's given to us. Everything around us affects us in some way. And the overview in Montana, this is some of the things I found. In 2023, Montana residents drink 3.34 gallons of ethanol per capita, which was the 5th highest in the United States. Montana has the highest rate of excessive drinking. So you put 3 milk jugs up here, 4 actually. Third one's about this full. Everybody in Montana would be considered, they drink enough that everybody would get that much. It uses the word ethanol. So what does ethanol mean? It's known as alcohol, a colorless, flammable, volatile liquid with a wine-like smell and a burning taste. It's the intoxicating agent in beer, wine, liquor. The intoxicating agent that you could also put the word poison. Indians call it firewater. The same alcohol can run a motor. We looked sometime a year or so ago, I read a book about the valley's history. That history would match a lot of this. The little town of Rexford had a lot of bars. And even the very early settlers, the people that sold alcohol often made better out than the miners that were trying to find gold and strike it rich. Montana has the highest percentage of driving fatalities involving alcohol at 46%, which is nearly half of all driving death in the state. The highest rate drinking cities in Montana. As I mentioned earlier, Montana is the fifth in consuming the most alcohol in the United Nations. And these are some of the hometowns you'll recognize. And this is the order. Number 10 was Big Fort. I found it very interesting. Behind this, it had a divorce rate. Divorce rate was 10.5. Whitefish is number 7. Divorce rate 11%. Missoula 12.6. Missoula is number 2 of the worst drinking cities. Divorce rate is 12.6. Hamilton is south of Missoula. Has the most alcohol consumers. Divorce rate 9.5. Some years ago, a man was here, men's seminar, and he shared his journey with alcohol and the deliverance from it. And his hardest part was that he cheated on his wife. That's often what happens with these divorce rates. In this case, the marriage was redeemed. But he explained alcohol drinking. He said when he first started to have a cold one with the happy hours, alcohol was down here, he'd go pick it up. I can handle it. What's the warning? I'll get to it a little bit later. Here's some of the warnings. Flammable, burning taste, intoxicating, poison, firewater, drunken driving, death, increases divorce rate. How much do we spend? It's kind of hinged on how much you make. From $82 to $119 per month on alcohol. Why drink alcohol? Have you asked yourself that question? Why do you drink it? In 2000, this is kind of a late survey. In 2009 to 2010, Montana's alcohol abuse, note abuse, was estimated to cost $5.11 million per year. This estimate includes costs for alcohol treatment, loss of work, productivity, and health care for alcohol-related fatalities. When alcohol-related crashes that result in injury were included, the total cost increased $642 million. Have you ever wondered why you had to be 21 to legally drink? The state recognizes the danger of alcohol. Yet I find Christians kind of going all over the chart with it. But like I said, we want to try to scratch that paint off. We want to try to see the danger of this. The man that shared his testimony, how his journey started with alcohol. He picked it up, he drank it, happy hours with his buddies. But it takes a little more to be happier sometimes. So slowly his journey into it. And I remember from my very own experience, I didn't like the taste of it. I had a struggle with it. I didn't like the taste of it. Thought it's like, but I was in the social pressure and a group of people that I chose to do it with. I remember the exact spot, all of a sudden I'd like, this tastes good. just like a switch. It tastes good. The way I can explain it, from that time, from picking it up, all of a sudden it's setting up here. It says, serve me. Now it became my king. Noah got drunk. This is an uncomfortable episode in Noah's life, but it serves as a reminder that even those saved by God are prone to sin. It is a powerful warning about how just one careless decision can destroy the reputation of even the most godly man or woman. That's especially true when it comes to drinking. There was a day I knew I'd have to face it. My children asked me, did you ever go to jail? Yes. And then they asked why. It was because of alcohol. I remember feeling the shame, embarrassment. My dad was known as a very likable man in the community. People liked him. I never heard anybody talk bad about him. I wanted to represent that. But here I'm in jail. Terrible embarrassing for my father. But I also want to give my children the tools how to avoid it, how to stay out of it. In Psalms, wine makes the heart merry is a phrase that suggests wine can make people feel happy and joyful. Is there anybody in here that doesn't want to be happy and joyful? If you're not, let's pray for it. So the happy and joyful with too much wine. Now I can laugh at something for 5 minutes that wasn't funny for 30 seconds. It affects our mood. Wine can increase the release of dopamine and serotonin in the brain, which can make us feel good. And who doesn't want to feel good? But this is a key danger of alcohol. It takes good judgment to know when to stop. But good judgment is exactly what alcohol tends to erode, wash away. Maybe Noah was haunted by his experience during the flood and chose to overconsume wine and get drunk in order to ease his pain. Attempting to avoid negative feelings is one of the major reason people abuse alcohol today. The strain of trying to rebuild a shattered world on top of a horrific loss of human life would doubtless have been a heavy burden. I believe there's kind of hard to guess why Noah did that. I mean, we read a little bit, but I've often wondered, this man had talked and walked with God. He built an ark. He did something that he preached to the people for 120 years, it says, about a flood's coming. There's danger coming. I want to go in this ark. As we know, hardly anybody followed him. Now he steps out in the world. I don't know how many of you guys have seen what flood damage does. If the Carolinas, I don't know if you've been there or not, but I've seen hurricane and cyclone damage, and it just reshapes the earth so quick and so fast. And I must believe when Noah got out there, everything was, maybe he where there was a big hill was just kind of a flat pile. Erosion on this lake has changed a lot in the last 35 years that I've noticed. But everything was totally different. And here he steps out and he plants something and he gets drunk. But that's not the end of it. When we have heavy burdens, loss of life, Jesus said, invites us, come to me, all who you labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. Jesus is offering a renewal and a strengthening of the Spirit. Matthew 7:13, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide, and the way is broad that leads to destruction. There are many who enter by it. I'm going to draw a highway because it's broad and wide. We're going to make a couple lanes in here. Here's exit 1. I find people that call themselves Christians, and I'm not knocking that, but for some reason they, and I myself used an excuse. Here's the first entry. It makes me feel happy, so I get on here. I exit in here, yield sign here, but I merge right into the first lane. I've got it under control. Second excuse is, I use these excuses. Jesus turned water into wine. So here we go. Stay right on here. It's in my control. I've got it. This is one I really like. Take a little wine for your stomach. In 2 Timothy. We tend to forget the word little wine. So here we go again. Use an excuse. Down the alcohol road. Others are going down here. It says a little wine. Good judgment. We tend to forget the word little wine. Good judgment goes out the door. I always thought it'd be easier. I can get off when I want. I can exit out. Many people do that. They think they can exit, next exit. I can get out, first exit I want. It's not that easy. When we use this excuses, what are we doing? I drew a picture here. I don't know if I can make it taped up here or not, but it's kind of drawn as a castle. All around the castle there's water. They call it a moat. When we, these are guard towers. Let's just say parents are in guard towers. The idea of that moat is the enemy has no strength in water. Most of us know that when we try to run or beat or do something underwater, there's not much there as strength. But in the ages past, this is what they did around cities or homes, and the only way the enemy could get in is he'd first have to get over the water and then climb a high wall, and this was designed up here to throw rocks and spears and bows at the enemy. But I'll call this a portal, the entry gate. That gate was let down over the water as a bridge so people could come in and out. When we bring alcohol into this, I want to show what you do. I'm just using this as our home. When we bring alcohol in our home, I'm going to say we have alcohol at our home. We use it to tincture herbs. My wife sent me to go get some 90 proof alcohol. I get in there and told her what I want, and she said, "Oh, you want it for tincture?" It's like, "Oh, some other people do this too then?" It's like, but we don't drink it to make us happy. When we open this portal, who can come in? What do we potentially let in? Proverbs 1 says, "Wine is a mocker, a strong brawler. Whoever is deceived or astray thereby is not wise." Some years ago in Indiana, where I grew up, there was a documentary made of called The Devil's Playground, in my very home ground. And it was my third cousin that kind of was the main player in it, third or fourth. And there was 2 towns that were dry towns with no alcohol, that sold alcohol. Now, earlier years when I was there, they sold it in my little hometown, but later it was bought out and turned into a hardware. So I don't know if few of you know where Shipshewana is. It's a dry town and it's a touristy town, but there's no alcohol sales in that town. There's enough Christian people that they banned it from the town. But why was Devil's Playground made on there? This is an environment I grew up. I watched this little video clip with Dad. He asked me, "Is that how it really was?" I said, "Yeah." All this time I was under his wing, and he didn't realize it. So many times that can go on. As parents, don't see the full picture. But this lady would follow the young guys around and film everything they did, and this was made known to the world, and she got some kind of award for it. And in the end, the actor sits down, "I don't know what I am or who I am." He hadn't met Christ yet. Wine produces mockers. Alcohol leads to brawls. Those led astray by alcohol cannot be wise. Wine makes you mean. Beer makes you quarrelsome. A staggering drunk is not much fun. I have to share maybe one of my first exposures to a drunk. Dad took us northern Michigan to fish coho salmon. They're big like this, and I was quite young when we started doing. Every fall we go up, and he worked at a factory where they had campers and stuff, so he get one of those. We go up, camp in it, and go fishing. And there was a lot of alcohol involved along those streams where people were snagging these salmon. The river was probably about twice as big what it is under the Libby Dam. Anyway, I was a fairly young guy, and it wasn't unusual as the evening started growing, you'd hear more noises from the drunks and yelling and carrying on what they do. But this particular day, one of those guys started to drink early, and He was just making a fool out of himself through the valley, and loud and obnoxious, and you could just sense it was getting under people's skin. And for some reason, we wear chest waders to go out in the deeper water and it was a fast stream, and he decided he wants to go out there and show people how to fish, and he was brawling, carrying on, and he hooks into something, and he yells, "Fish on!" He takes the pole like this, starts leaning back. I could see he snagged into a log or something. It wasn't moving. The fish wasn't moving. And usually if you have something, you kind of go to the side, but he started leaning back, and all of a sudden it goes snap, and he just down back into under the water, and there was just a ripple of laughter all down the valley through the river. Fortunately, the man got it out. His buddies got it out. He was sputtering, carrying on, and to me, when I'm in nature, I want to have a sober mind. I don't understand the drunkenness of such an action, but that was kind of probably one of my main exposures. Let's look at mocker. It means to scorn someone. So mockers do not take seriously the words of the others, but openly ridicule it. Doesn't this sound like Genesis 3? You shall not die, but your eyes shall be open. The serpent made Eve think she was more trustworthy than God. The serpent left Eve to draw to her own conclusion. This is what Proverbs says, 23:31. At the last it biteth, is talked about wine. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. So what it's trying to say, if you bring alcohol in your home, you're inviting a serpent. That sounds pretty harsh. But potentially you're inviting a serpent to slither across this bridge to get into your house. A deceiver. In other words, a deceiver. The serpent left Eve to draw her own conclusion. God says, "Where art thou?" They said, "We're hiding because we're naked." Does that sound like Noah? God asked, "Well, why are you naked?" And Eve replies, "The serpent beguiled me." Drinkers often have this cover-up with alcohol, blame shifting. Devil made me do it. When we have sin in our life, we try to cover it up. We don't like anything. We don't like it exposed. So we try to hide it. Poor Adam and Eve tried to get some fig leaves to hide their shame. But there was nobody on planet Earth to tell them that that's shameful at that point. As soon as they sinned, they knew they had shame in their life. They tried to cover it with leaves. God's correction was that He put animal skin on it. Something had to die for their sins. Drinkers are more comfortable in dim-lit environments. They are far more comfortable in such setting than bright lights. Shall darkness cover you? I had a pastor friend in the East that his testimony was he went out to a very popular restaurant with 3 friends, and there's a lot of alcohol consumption going on, and there's a steakhouse. I've been there myself, but every time they went in there, that rock and roll, they had a little child that would scream, could not get it to settle for nothing. They tried it 3 times. Finally, the parents took it as a warning to leave. They went and told their friends, they're going. It's too dark in here. I'm talking about a spiritual darkness. This child maybe sensed it a lot more than parents. Some time ago, me and my wife were in the Spokane area to do business, and we decided we want to eat at a nice restaurant, and I just got this really restless feeling, and I was a little impatient. I wanted to eat a quick meal and get out and head for home, 4 hours from home. But I just had this sense of darkness over it. She wasn't about to give it up that easy because, we're this far, let's eat here. So I went along with it, and not too long in it, she said, this is a dark place. We ate our meal, we went out, but that one's checked off for us. But God gives us a spirit of discernment, praise God. Wine is like, it's a mocker. I'm just going to read through some of these that when you bring alcohol in to consume, it's a mocker, it's a liar, it's a brawler, poverty, unstable, nakedness, woes, sorrow, contention, babbling, wounds without cause, redness of eye, drowsiness, perverse speech. I'm going to turn to Proverbs. A lot of this is right here in Proverbs 23. Let not thy heart envy sinners, but be in fear of the Lord all day, for surely there is an end, and thy expectation shall not be cut off. Hear thou, my son, and be wise, guide thy heart in the ways. Be not among winebibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh. For drunkenness and gluttony shall come to poverty, drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Hearken unto thy father that begat thee. Despise not thy mother when she is old. Buy the truth, sell it not. Also wisdom and instruction and understanding. The father of righteous shall greatly rejoice, and he that begetteth a wise child shall have joy of him. Thy father, thy mother shall be glad, that she bare thee shall rejoice. My son, give me thy heart. Let thy eyes observe my ways. For a whore is a deep ditch, and a strange woman is a narrow pit. She also layeth in wait, as for a prey, and increases transgression amongst men. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contention? Who has babbling? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? They that tarry long at wine. They that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon wine when it is red, when it giveth its color in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. Thy eyes shall behold strange women, thy heart shall utter perverse things. Yea, thou shalt be as he that lieth down in the midst of a sea, or as he that lieth at top of a mast. They have stricken me. They have stricken me, shalt thou say. I was not sick. They have beaten me. I felt it not. When I wake, I will seek it yet again. The Bible makes one thing very, very clear. It says drunkards will not enter heaven. So why do we think we can get hold of something that is a serpent? It says here, he layeth down in the mass of the sea, and as he that layeth upon the top of a mast. When you look at a sailboat, years ago they had a little, what you call a crow's nest up there. The description is that a drunk man is like that. When a boat is on the water, it's always going like this, and up in the top, it may be going 4 or 5 feet across, and it's given the description of a man with too much wine. And the symbol of what I get out of this, when you bring it in the house, there's not stability in the house. I'm going to go through some of the meanings here. Brawler, someone who is prone to fighting, quarreling, or engaging in verbal attacks or physical altercation. Poverty. This is a tough one. People that live in poverty get so down that they pour alcohol on top, and then it takes them down further and further and further. It says being cut off from others, being emotionally crushed, hopeless, or lost. Could mean economic deprivation or social vulnerability. I don't know if any of you ever read The Broken Bottle. There used to be a book that's called The Broken Bottle. It's just brings a lot of sadness to read those stories. Somebody put a collection of stories together that the fruits of an alcoholic. Unstable is an inconsistent behavior. Susceptibility to false teaching, wavering faith. Nakedness. Noah was found naked. It exposes our shameful ways. My wife could tell you a little bit story of nakedness. She was having a good time in a Dairy Queen one Sunday. Then a man came up to the counter in a birthday suit to, I guess, get some ice cream to cool down. I don't know, but when you look upon nakedness, you instantly think shame, don't you? Was the man behind that counter in his right mind? We could probably all reason no. She said the last scene of that man, he was running across the stubble field heading to a Bear Bottom colony, I guess, and with cops in hot pursuit. Why was he running? Maybe something, but anyway, nakedness. We think of nakedness. Another story that, when I think of nakedness, you ever had bad nightmares, dreams? I won't mention which of our children, but when you have children, you have extra clothes in the van because when they have accidents, that you can change them out. And this was a Sunday evening at church, and one of them had those accidents that you wonder how it could go from top to bottom. The poor parents couldn't find any clothing. We did manage to get the undercarriage covered, but This little kid comes around the hallway, and the teenage boys were there, and one of the teenage boys meant a dream realized or came alive. And I knew what he was saying, that you wake up and you're naked in a crowd. Embarrassment. But a child doesn't understand that. But adults, we know. And drinking, it goes along with the nakedness. Woe. Great sorrows. How many times do you know people that do alcohol? They have great sorrows. They're miserable. Afflictions and troubles. Sorrow means a feeling of pain or grief that can be a result of sin, a tragedy circumstance. Contention, disagreement, conflicts. Babbling is someone who talks foolishly or without understanding, wounds without cause. Friend shared just where I grew up. A guy got killed by a drunk driver. The drunk driver broke up with his girlfriend, decided to go get drunk. Being rejected does not feel good. But he goes, drinks himself so silly drunk. He wakes up in the jail, doesn't know why he's in there. He comes to find out, while he was drunk, he smashed into his buddy, killed him, didn't even realize it. Wounds without a cause. Drowsiness, perverse speech. Parents, let's listen to this. I want to mention too, when I was single, there was things in life like this. It's like, well, this is what I said to myself. If I was a parent, I probably wouldn't drink. Today is the day to know where you stand. Our children have inquisitive minds. How does it work? When I get drowsy in the van, I sometimes stop and get an energy drink. I know it's not the best for me, but I also want to stay awake. My children is like, Daddy, can I taste it? Daddy, can I taste it? I usually put it in my pocket and I threw it away, that they don't get a taste of it, because I know it tastes good to them. And I wonder how many alcoholics could say that they snuck alcohol out of their dad's fridge. Is there anybody in here that did something like that? They're inquisitive. They want to know why. But this is how the angel of the Lord spoke in Luke 1:15. It says, the angel was speaking to the parents. John shall not drink wine or strong drink. Twice angels spoke this in Samson's life. But if their parents hadn't got that message to the son, would the son have known? We parents are responsible for what we teach. And it is more than what we teach, it's what we live. The Bible strongly condemns drinking, calling it a sin, a form of debauchery, which means excessive indulgence in sensational pleasure, often associated with immoral behavior. It can also refer to a wasted, unproductive life. What is the true meaning of sober? It's not just the absence of alcohol. The Bible has it much deeper than. It can be a spiritual, maybe I have a message on that later, but it generally accepted that sober, not drinking at all, completely abstain from alcohol. However, truly being sober means more than not drinking alcohol.
Being sober is about transforming your entire lifestyle, mindset, behaviors, and to live a healthy, fulfilling life without the influence of substance. Substance use disorder is caused by multiple factors, including genetic vulnerability. Excuses. John, a third-generation alcoholic, came through this church body and shared his testimony. Came over a hill, drunk, lost it, crashed. Weeks in the hospital, said, I'll never drink. 2 weeks after he was out, he was back in there again. He was the third generation. But he could not keep his commitment to himself without Christ. He said there was a man in construction that started witnessing to him. This man was saying God had saved his marriage. John got saved. But he said his grandpa died on the deathbed. He was screaming for alcohol. When you look up alcohol brains and common brain, normal brains without alcohol, there's a darkness over the whole thing, the little blood vessels. They're dead. That grandpa, poor grandpa, I can kind of imagine his brain. These are some excuses people, is environmental stress. My brother was working with a drinker. Guy was stressed out and he just stepped out the door and said he's going to go home and get drunk. Is that a fix? No, that's a dousing of something down here that only Christ can fix. Social pressure. I feel like I grew up into social pressure. We learned to hide it, but yet it went on. Individual personality characteristics and physic problems. This is the most, probably one of the main reasons, or a lot of the reasons that it's individual personality characteristics and it's a physical, our makeup, such as I'm no good, I'm shy, I can't speak, I'm a loner, nobody cares. So if I dose myself with alcohol, I come bolder, I come more aggressive in who I can approach. And I know that was some of my problems. I was shy, so when alcohol was in, I became more bold. I could joke and I could reason and laugh and go along with the crowd. The Fischeric meaning is I don't know how to pronounce it. Fischeric comes from an ancient Greek word, Fiski, meaning soul, and Iterikos, meaning medical. It literally means medical treatment of the soul. We are created to love, and when that's not filled, people tend to douse alcohol on top to try to fix it. It never works. The doctors are stumped how to treat this. I work with quite a few paramedic people. Over and over, there was someone that it seemed about every month, twice, about 1.5 times, twice a month, this woman would call. She's having some stomach problems or and she usually when they get there, she's higher than a kite, possibly with alcohol and drugs. And she gets into paramedics and she's saying, I'm beautiful, and she laughs and she carries on, and they take her to the emergency room and they examine her and, they release her. But what's going on with the woman? When you have to convince yourself you're beautiful, it's probably an affirmation you never heard when you were young. Deep down in that soul, there's something that she wanted, she was craving it. And when alcohol was doused enough, some of that came out. But it could also be a socially that she has no friends in this connection. She feels like she has some friends that are helping her. But reality, she wants to hear that you're okay, you're released, you're good for now. In 1 Peter, environmental stresses and daily havoc. Environmental stresses may vary from daily hassles as traffic to significant life events as such as marriage or even catastrophic occurrences like war. Whether they are labeled as positives or negatives, each stressor requires adaptation and co-oping. Happy hour is not going to fix it. Our adaptation and coping are often copied by our children. Social pressure is the influence of others have on how we think, act, or behave. It can come from our peers, society, culture, all around us. Social pressures can impact our decision and action, sometimes without realizing it. Young man I worked with who got into the partying crowd, and he came home and said, "Mom, everybody's doing it." She said, "That is the very reason you go the other way." Romans 12:2 says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." Renewing your minds means being changed from the inside out, especially how we think. Renewing means your mind means interpreting life through God's Word and the Holy Spirit rather than through your own experience. The goal of this verse is to encourage people to stop living like everyone else and to begin to understand God's will for their life. Jesus said, "Be not in the world." Be in the world, but not of the world. Meaning, don't follow unbelieving world's value and belief and conduct. Although nearly 2,000 years had passed since Jesus spoke these words, that the truth remains. Christ is coming, and we need to watch and be spiritually fit. This means working faithfully at the task God has given us. Don't let your mind and spirit be dull by careless living and drinking. Don't let your problems of life weigh you down. Be ready to move at God's command. Let's look at overcharge, surfeiting, weighed down with dispensation. It expressed the parable of the prodigal son illustrates the consequences of dispensation. The term dispensation can also mean mental distraction, amusement, or diversion. Dispensation can also refer to wasteful or thoughtless spending or activity. This is coming out of the Luke, what I read this month. The word surfeiting can also mean cloying. This is a word I didn't know what it means, especially to a disgusting, excessive degree. Loading to a feeling of disgust, intoxicated, overindulging. I was at a place, they had an eating contest, and when I read this, it's like, I can't support that. This was in the community. A lot of conservative people. They made these big whoopie pies with cream and about this thick, and they had an eating contest. In 10 minutes, see who can eat the most whoopie pies, and the people were just, I think one managed to wolf down 18 of them. And it's like, I can't support it. God is warning us not to do things like that. In the Bible, heed means pay close attention, be careful. The warning sign, or take notice of something important. It is often used in the context of obeying God. Listen to His word. Be vigilant against sin. Heed means to keep guard, observe, to look. In this house, 1 Peter 5:8, be sober-minded, be alert. Your adversary, the devil, is prowling around like a roaring lion, looking for anyone he can devour, whose sole focus is to divide, destroy God's people, or to defeat the purpose of God. I'm going to close out with Peter. It says, "For as much then as Christ has suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourself likewise with the same mind. For he that has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, that he no longer should live the rest of his time in the flesh to the lust of man, but to the will of God. For the time past, our life may suffice us to have wrought the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lasciviousness, lust, excessive wine, rivaling, banquets, abominable idolatry, wherein they think it strange that ye run not with them, the same excess in wrath, speaking of evil of you. Who shall give account to him that is ready to judge the quick and dead? For this cause was the gospel preached also to them that are dead, that they might be judged according to the man in the flesh, but live according to God in the Spirit. But the end of all things are at hand. Be ye therefore sober, watch unto prayer. And above all things, have fervent charity amongst yourselves. Charity shall cover multitudes of sin. Use hospitality to one another without grudging." I'm going to close it with that.